In the hotel room, Li Bin looked at the star coins in his account and pondered the future. The hotel, booked by Salado, was quite expensive, costing 1 star coin every week, naturally charged to the company account. Li Bin worked as a ship captain at the People's Welfare Transportation Company, earning an annual salary of only 32 star coins, which was already 4 times that of an ordinary crew member. Besides daily expenses, all his spare money went into smuggling. Because of his crucial role, the dividends were high. Over 8 years, he had only earned a total of 1,392 star coins. This amount, on any planet, was enough for an average person to buy a house and land, and live a middle-class life. Star coins were the official currency of the People's Domain era. Although the Stargates had collapsed, many automated factories in the Milky Way were still operating, continuously producing technological artifacts of Lyra that had been lost. As long as one had star coins, they could withdraw goods from these factories at any time, obtaining top-tier industrial products from before the Great Collapse. Therefore, star coins were still widely used. However, because the People's Domain had lost contact with the Lyra star region, no one knew how to produce star coins. These beautiful little things were becoming increasingly scarce, changing from ordinary currency to a general equivalent, used only in interstellar trade. Ordinary people used currencies issued by the administrative bodies of each planet. The names and values were numerous and confusing, but all were based on the star coin. Therefore, merchants and businesses, large and small, often settled trades using star coins. With the People's Domain out of contact and no longer issuing currency, and after 206 years of trade prosperity in Lyra, the value of star coins had risen even further. Despite being laid off, Li Bin's dream of commanding a fleet remained unchanged. Before transmigrating, he had dreamt of the vast starry sea. Now, after 8 years in space, watching spaceships come and go every day, he was unwilling to settle down and farm, or work in a factory. It's a pity that my capital is still too little. I wonder how things are at home. Can't count on my cheap parents, but I have an obedient and well-behaved younger sister. Oh well, every bride eventually has to meet her in-laws. The factory owes a lot of money. I was even put up as collateral. I should prepare for the factory to go bankrupt. As long as his sister was still there, Li Bin consoled himself. If they had used his sister as collateral too, he would definitely not let those 2 old things off the hook. Thanks to genetic modification, Li Bin was 1.8 meters tall at the age of 8. Now, at 16, his height hadn't changed much, but his body had become stronger, making his sleeves and shoulders feel tight. With this bulging fist, those old things would probably cry for a long time, right? After all, having experienced military training in his past life, Li Bin knew a bit of military boxing. If the old things died, he would follow the story of Wu Zixu. Having made up his mind, he left the hotel, hailed a taxi, and headed towards the industrial district where his home was. The Elphi space station was an early design of the People's Domain. Because the home planet was barren, no new modules had been added in 200 years, maintaining a simple screw shape. The screw cap had a diameter of 6 kilometers, the screw shaft a diameter of 2.6 kilometers, and the total height was 9 kilometers. Moreover, as a man-made structure, although it didn't look big, it was essentially a town. Elphi had a population of 1 million, with over 800,000 living permanently on the space station, while the remaining 200,000 worked in mining on the surface of the lava planet. Therefore, the space station was like a stacked city. After hundreds of years, each space station had formed its unique internal structure. If he didn't take a taxi, Li Bin would definitely get lost wandering around. The industrial district was located in the screw shaft section of the space station, near the lower engine. Unlike the screw cap, which relied on rotation for gravity, this area was significantly affected by engine thrust, so the building orientations were completely different from the residential modules. Compared to the lively, advertisement-filled residential modules, the industrial district appeared very dilapidated. There were no streetlights, no tourists, and workers passing by wore masks to filter the dust. The steel walls were covered in messy graffiti and swear words, painted with fluorescent paint to cover old bloodstains. Getting off at his family's factory, Li Bin stepped onto the weak gravity and was surprised. The factory had clearly been recently renovated, looking completely different from the surrounding factories covered in stubborn grime. He could hear the furnaces burning even from outside. Wow, is ore refining this profitable? How come I didn't know? Li Bin looked at the renewed factory in astonishment. He adjusted his collar, feeling that his face hadn't changed in 8 years, and walked towards the factory. The steel plate ground at the factory entrance suddenly opened, revealing 2 machine guns. Warning, you have entered the territory of the Industrial Integrated Association. You do not have authorization. Please leave immediately. Huh? Li Bin was stunned. Was his family business this big? Had they joined the association? For a moment, Li Bin wondered if his cheat in this life wasn't his extraordinary memory, but wealth. But looking at the unwavering gun barrels pointed at him, he wisely dismissed the thought and turned around swiftly. Damn it, the factory must have gone bankrupt and been acquired. What to do? He used to live and eat at the factory. Li Bin didn't know where his cheap parents lived in this life. He tried contacting them using their IDs, but the beautiful AI assistant on the service interface told him that they had stopped communication services 5 years ago. After wandering around, he couldn't find any information, but the polluted air in the industrial district made his eyes red and he started sneezing. Covering his nose, he ran around and finally turned into a familiar dead end. This dead end was where local residents spontaneously set up stalls. Due to the limited spending power, there weren't many stalls, and customers were even scarcer, as most people were still at work in the factories. As Li Bin entered, everyone looked at him warily. His clothes were no different from others, except they were clean, very clean, clearly not a local. Except for holidays, locals wouldn't wash their clothes like this, they just get dirty again after a day outside. 2 people wearing simple pig-nosed masks and cloaks walked up and blocked Li Bin's path. Even through the darkened lenses, Li Bin could sense their hostile gazes. The industrial district was controlled by factory owners, and law enforcement rarely bothered to intervene. Poverty breeds chaos, and chaos breeds order. This kind of hidden trading spot was naturally a perfect place for thugs. Li Bin pointed at his red nose, his voice slightly choked. Nothing else, just want to buy a mask. He didn't reveal that he was a local. The Elphi space station didn't have a large population, and the industrial district even less so, with less than 50,000 permanent residents. News of someone being a ship crew member wouldn't stay hidden. An annual salary of 8 star coins would surely give these thugs ideas about borrowing money. Presenting himself as an outsider, although preventing him from blending in, meant the thugs were less likely to provoke someone whose background they didn't know. After all, which factory executive didn't have a few good-for-nothing offspring? If they hit someone they shouldn't have, law enforcement wouldn't come, but the factory owners would dare to tear down the industrial district. The 2 thugs moved aside as expected. Li Bin scanned the stalls and quickly went to one displaying a dozen masks. Buying a mask, you decide the size. Li Bin said, releasing his hand so the stall owner could see his face to choose the right size. The stall owner looked at him, silent. Hurry up, buddy, I'm not feeling well. Li Bin's nose was stuffy, and his eyes were watering. The stall owner trembled, looking down. His right finger swiped on a palm-sized computer on his left wrist, resembling a Pip-Boy, then grabbed Li Bin's wrist. Brother? Brother? Wait, who are you? Hearing the stall owner's deep voice, Li Bin was dumbfounded for the 3rd time today. He didn't have a brother. You're Li Bin, right? This is the name you chose for yourself when you were little, isn't it? The man became excited, speaking rapidly, mentioning his parents' names and the factory's name. All correct. Li Bin remained silent. The man ripped off his mask, revealing a flushed face that did resemble Li Bin's. I'm Li Changzhen. I was born shortly after you became a crew member. Sister always told me you were the smartest, talking at 5 months old. I have your photos and videos on my processor. Li Changzhen rambled on, showing the Pip-Boy on his wrist, displaying a photo of Li Bin with his family before he left home. Seeing Li Bin's continued silence, Li Changzhen grew anxious. He wanted to play the video, but Li Bin grabbed his hand. Looking at this younger brother, born more than 8 years after he left. This guy, standing a head taller than him, over 1.9 meters, with a large frame perfect for manual labor, was at most 8 years old this year. It seemed no matter how much genetic modification accelerated physical growth, the mind was still that of a child. And among his peers, he was probably a bit slow, Likely because all the nutrients went to his muscles and bones. The thought that this brother was only 8, so innocent, and so affectionate towards him, must be because his sister constantly spoke highly of him. Probably things like, "Brother's back, the sky is clear again," or "Brother's back, everything's alright." With those good-for-nothing parents, he really was their only hope. "Listen, little bro," Li Bin sighed. Considering Li Changzhen's age and his enthusiastic calls of brother, he couldn't bring himself to get angry, even for his sister's sake. "First, I know what meaning your name probably holds, but I gotta say, it's really outdated. Second," he raised his hand and gestured a few times. Li Changzhen understood and squatted down, letting Li Bin rub his head, this large man like a child. "By yelling like that, didn't you just reveal all my secrets? Even that I was a crew member? Well, saves them the trouble of finding out themselves." After rubbing his head, Li Bin turned around and, as expected, saw the 2 thugs approaching, along with several others emerging from the corners of the stalls. They drew their homemade weapons, blocking his exit. "Wow, what a clever tactic," Li Bin muttered dryly, glancing at the crude weapons in the thugs' hands. He casually picked up a mask and put it on, his voice muffled.